This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle Academy, where filmmakers and screenwriters go to learn from top Hollywood industry professionals. Learn more at ifhacademy.com. Now, we've been talking all about you producing and making, view askew kind of films and all that kind of stuff. But then, out of left field, almost, I start seeing that you're writing Freebirds and getting involved with that, and then directing the Grinch, co-directing the Grinch. And how the hell did you get into animation? And how did that work around town when you walked in? I think you were saying, aren't you the Clerks guy? Why are you in animation now?
Yeah. I'd always wanted. I remember I was going to go to art school or film school. So the sort of, I always was doodling and drawing, and I was really before I was really debating whether to go to art school or film school. Right at the moment that I ended up making a decision to go to Vancouver Film School and meet Kevin, it's that fast, and I didn't know what to do, and I was living near UCLA. My grades weren't good enough to go there, but I was living in these sort of shitty apartments there. And I used to run around the campus. I would do 2 or 3 runs around the entire campus. And then sometimes I'd cut through the middle, and there were these big stairs where they shot Gotcha. There were these big stairs right in the middle of the thing, and I would run up the stairs. And I was running, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I run up the stairs, and it was nighttime. I would run at night after I was working. And I get to the top of the stairs, and there's really bright light in my face. And so I kind of slow down and adjust, and they were shooting a movie. And I was like, that was it. Wow. My decision was sort of made in that moment. And then basically I very quickly applied to the Vancouver Film School, and 5 months later from that moment, I'm up in Vancouver and I meet Kevin, after that sort of moment. But the art part, the art thing was always in my head.
So in other words, if an animation cell would have fell out of a window and hit you in the head, you might have never gone on that ride.
There's a life drawing class up there. I'd have been like, oh my God, this is what I should do.
This is a sign. It's a sign.
And so I go to film, but I'd always been interested in it. And I've always loved animation, but the big moment was I remember Kevin and I, because of Jason Lee, got to see The Incredibles before it came out, and it was a special screening. And I loved animation, and I thought that Toy Story, and I'd already sort of I was really interested in this sort of new technology applied to this sort of classical 2D. And so I saw that screening though, and that was the thing where I was like, oh, I want to do, I'd really love to do this, because it felt like, oh, this is a movie. It really felt like a movie. It was it's an animated movie, but the camera work, the performances, it just felt like, oh, you could just make a movie. You could do what crane shot, you could do whatever you wanted. You had all the filmmaking tools inside of this box, And from there, and I remember telling Kevin, I think I left there and I was like, I want to do that. I want to get under the hood of that and sort of do it. And so coming off of Zach and Miri, it was kind of the moment where I was like, if I'm going to do it, I just got to do it. I got to sort of stop. I could do this forever. This is comfortable. And, but for me, I was like, I just have to stop and sort of, rebuild myself, refocus myself specifically on animation and writing too. And I stopped after Zach and Miri and was just kind of focusing on writing and trying to get into animation. And that's when this guy, Aaron Warner, I knew. And then it becomes you're in the business long enough and you know enough people. And if you sort of,
right.
If you're fun to work, if you're good to work with, if you work hard, all that stuff can pay off. I'll say that, which is Freebirds becomes this guy, Aaron Warner, who produced all the Shreks, was like, have this movie Freebirds. It was called Turkeys at the time, and he was like, if you wanna learn animation, like this thing's like a fast moving train, and if you're willing to sort of like jump onto it, you'll learn very quickly. And so I was like, as the producer, and I was like, this is my shot, because at that point it's like now it's like animation, making animated films is a much broader sort of, there's more opportunities. But at that point it was like, this is the beginning of everything opening up. But that was more like Pixar and Blue Sky. Like there was these established studios, and if you had an idea, you had to go to those specific places, and that was it. So then I jumped on Freebirds, and just through the process of making it, it's a very open, collaborative sort of medium. It's a little bit different from making live action because it's just the pace of it's different. It's just a much more open forum. You're sort of making it you're getting together with a bunch of artists, coming up with ideas, and so I started writing pages, and those are getting brought in, and so then I come off of Freebirds, and I don't want to do animation. I was like, I don't know if I want to do animation, and so because I was tired, it was just tough.
Yeah, because you produced and wrote as well.
Yeah, it was a tough schedule, and so I came off, and I was like, I'm not sure. I was like, I loved a lot of it and the people I worked with, but I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do it. And then I was just working as an editor, which I've done through the years. And I cut a documentary on Marvel that was on ABC called From Pulp to Pop. Mm-hmm. It was like, so I did that, and then I was cutting. I'd taken over, or I was just doing a little polish. I wasn't the main editor. I was just there for the end of a movie it ultimately became called No Escape, but it was called The Coup with Owen Wilson and Pierce Brosnan. It's by the Dowdle brothers, mm-hmm. who just did the Waco series, and like I had known them, and my friend was the editor, and I was like, oh, I'll get on that, and then that's when I got emailed from Chris Melandandri emailed me, and I didn't know him, and I was like, well, I don't understand why I'm getting an email from him, but once again, so Brian Lynch, who was the craft service guy on Chasing Amy and done all these other things, he wrote Minions, but he had wrote Hop, so he'd been working in Illumination for a while, and he had given me, he had given Chris my information, and Chris was like, hey, because Illumination at that point was like, they were making more movies, and so it was like, as opposed to one every 2 or 3 years, they were trying to do, 2 a year, like they were just. And he was feeling like, maybe I'll bring in for the first time like a producer, like an independent producer to help me sort of manage projects. And once again, I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I want to do animation. And the Dowdle brothers were just like, the edit room that we're in was like a block and a half from Chris's office. And they were like, dude, like, what the fuck? Like, go walk down the block. And I was like, all right. So I went, and then Chris and I hit it off really well. And we met 3 or 4 times. And then we met a couple times before the Grinch came up. And then he showed me some artwork. It had been going on at that point for 6-7 months or whatever. And so we went back and forth. And then finally I was like, yeah. Like I really got along with him well. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. So then that happens.
It's so funny because when you talk, as you're talking, a lot of filmmakers listening, a lot of times they think, oh, it's about the agent, or it's about the manager, or about, this or that. And it's about relationships. I mean, seriously, the craft service guy who, if you would have been a dick to,
yes,
would have never recommended you for that job. Because you never know where anyone's going to be. And I've had that happen to me in my career, where they were my interns and then they all go off and are directing movies and have, all this amazing career. It's so remarkable that just the craft service guy what is it, 15 years later, 20 years later? Something like
It's like 24 or 5 years later. And I had kept in touch with Brian. Like,
Sure.
Like, he'd sent me scripts and I'd read them and we'd kept in touch. But yeah, that was,
It's about relationships.
That was the seed of it, of like, that someone like Chris was like, knew Brian and was like, trust his opinion. And then he's like, who do you know that might be good about? And I had come off of Freebird, so I ultimately had some experience at that. Right. So it's like, I had some experience. And I was even honest with Chris, where I was like, I honestly don't know if I want to do animation.
It's the worst job interview ever.
I was really like, I don't know if I want to get into this, but like I said, I really kind of got on with him. And then, when he finally brought up the Grinch, when he brought up the Grinch, I was torn too, because, I love the Chuck Jones version. Mm-hmm. I grew up with that. And so I was like, oh man, like, I don't know if I want to be the guy that fucked this up.
I don't want to be the guy that screws up the Grinch.
Yeah, like I was like, if it was just the book, it's like at least you're like, oh, like he didn't do a good adaptation. But it was like there was a lot of things for it. There was the beloved Chuck Jones classic, which was in me too. But then I was like, but it's a really cool opportunity to sort of build out a different version of it, and also build a bigger world. That was like part of what we were doing, is like, we get to really explore Whoville and really expand on it and make this sort of a more expansive experiential movie of it. So
and it did okay at the box office. Did okay.
It ultimately did well, yeah.
About half a billion according to IMDb Pro. So not bad for a job you didn't want.
The credit goes to so many people.
Sure.
That's part of what's so much fun with animation, is it's like there's so many incredible artists, from layout to animators to the sort of concept artists and art directors and the vocal talent. Like, there's so many people. That's the greatest thing of animation, is like, it's like you spend years and years and years, and just when you're like about to shoot yourself, going like, if I have to fucking look at another storyboard, it's like, then you start to see like, then it's like right when you're there, it's like you start animating. And then right when you're sort of like going like, they start lighting and rendering, and like, it's like right when you're sort of getting tired and going like, when do we get to see the final? And, right when you're just sort of desperate to see final images, they always seem to pop up, and you go like, oh, okay, this is why we're doing it. Because it's like, it does just look incredible. It's like when you get to sit in dailies and see the finished stuff, it's just so amazing. But it is like, you have to be patient.
No, and now it's a system. I mean, when they were coming up, when Disney Animation was kind of setting it all up, they didn't even know what they were doing. But like now there's a system, and I have a good buddy of mine that worked at Disney for 12 years as an animator. He did environments. He was a lead in environments, and I would go into Disney Animation and I'd walk around and I'd see the different departments, and I'm just like in awe. It's just in awe of what you could do. And as a director, because I know this, they did this at Disney Animation, is they would have a board up and they would give the directors a stack of cash, of like paper cash, and they would have all the sequences of the movie up, and they go, you can put money on what sequences you want to spend a little extra money on, but this is all the money you get. So they would get to choose like, this action sequence I want a lot more attention to, as opposed to just let's kind of get it through. And does anything like that happen, or that was just a Disney thing?
That definitely did not happen, because I would have just walked out with the money.
You're like, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to put it in my pocket. And
it was fake. Scott, it was fake money. It was fake money.
We could talk about this later, but I'm going to take my wife out to lunch. No, we didn't do that. I mean, it's something that, but those conversations are sort of collective.
Right.
You're sort of, and I mean, to me, it's just something you inherently know, whether it's a live action movie or a
right,
or a animated movie. You're sitting there going like, hey, we have limited resources, we have limited money, we have limited time. So it's like, if and in animation too, there's that sense of like, well, if you want this sequence to be freaking huge, then you better get going now, right? Because there's a pipeline. There's a moment where it's like with the movie, it's just like it's cut off. It's like you can't add new shots. They won't make it through in time. So, there's a lot of thought constantly put into it of going like, oh, this is, we want to do a big shot here. Like we were doing there's a big, huge, like kind of drone crane shot in Grinch where we're like going through this pond of people skating and then all the way up to so you have to sort of like get all that stuff arranged because all the extra, it's basically live action. You have to sort of make sure that you've made those decisions to be like, oh, we want to set the tone here and want to do that here. And part of that has more to do with just like making movies with financial limitations,
right.
Which is most people. I mean, there are people who don't, there are filmmakers who are given the sort of do whatever they want. And I don't necessarily like, I mean, nobody's offered me that. I don't think
these are not problems you or I have.
Yeah, this is not a problem that I have, and I don't think it's a problem that I'll face. But I do think the limitation is those limitations can be really, really. It helps you. For me, it just helps you focus on the story,
right?
And go like, hey, like you better know what's important, or you better figure it the fuck out really quickly because you are in charge of like trying to argue why people should. We need more assets. We need this. We need that. If you're the person who's going to be driving and pushing for things, like it, the limitations will help you figure it out because you go like, all right, like we can reduce the amount of shots here. We can do this here. We don't need that many extras there. Like we can make that choice because like, I really want this to look like this, or I want this to sort of exist there. So, but no, nobody came around with cash.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. To watch the rest of this interview, head over to indiefilmhustle.com.